right idea.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna. I guess I can share.
Yeah.
When I think of the word Vedas right now, I'm specifically thinking of the verse in the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna is like, once your mind is no longer disturbed by the flowery language of the Vedas. And I always find that funny. I wish I knew the Sanskrit for it, but I don't. Hare Krishna.
Mm. Yeah, thank you.
Triguna Vishayo Veda.
I guess it's like a manual for living
Mm.
well.
Yeah. When I think of Vedas, I think about something vast because I know there's so many. Um, wow, and you moved like 6 screens in 2 seconds.
Still going.
Still going. All right, no worries. All right, anyone else? I guess everyone shared. Alyssa, if you do have something, feel free to put in the chat or if you want to share. But I'll just hand it over to Urugaya, who's our speaker for today. If you've been to one of his talks, you know this is going to be a very interactive and fun and wisdom-filled talk. He's currently living in India, in Mayapur, and him and his wife share vegetarian food and ice cream. Also, they have a kind of ice cream business in Mayapur, and we always joke about doing a Bhakti Studio trip to Mayapur to just eat all their ice cream. But apart from that, he is very spiritually motivated, and he's been studying Bhakti Yoga for a while. And he studied media and communication in college and then became a full-time monk for about 6 years. Really cool. And now he's in Mayapur sharing knowledge, practicing Bhakti Yoga. And he joins Wisdom Wednesdays once in a while to inspire all of us. And just a very cool, chill personality. So very grateful to have you, Urugaya Prabhu. And over to you.
Thanks so much. Nice to see you all again. Actually, we went to Delhi just before Purushottam, so like two months ago or 6 weeks ago we went. I think I didn't see you guys since then, and me and my wife did like a international ice cream course. So since we came back, we really leveled up we new flavors, new you should come. Obviously, people come to the Dham more for spiritual things and for eating ice cream, but it's good to be balanced, Good to be balanced, balance the matter and spirit. Yeah. Anyway, today I wanted to speak we just had Purushottam. Maybe those know who don't know, it's like a Vedic leap year. Like I think every 3 years there's a extra month in the Vedic calendar, and that's to balance out, like same like a leap year. And generally for performing, like in the Vedic culture, the Purushottamas or the Vedic leap year is considered inauspicious actually for doing many things. It's considered like inauspicious, but then there's like a story behind it where this month becomes highly auspicious or highly beneficial for performing spiritual activities, especially activities related to bhakti. So for Purushottam, me and a couple friends, and like my mother and some friends from Australia and some devotees in South Africa, we started reading Bhagavatam every morning together, just for like 30, 40 minutes every day. And then when I was like asked to give the Wednesdays talk, I was like, well, can I just everything that I've digested in the last month, can I just like try to package it and share it with you guys? But I guess one of the, not issues, but one of the things about that is like, I have my mood or my goal, or like, when I'm performing my spiritual activities, I have like a goal in mind that I'm trying to achieve. So when I study and when I share, anyway, all I'm trying to say is like I hope I'm not like putting too much of my mood on you, but I just want to be open-hearted and share whatever. Like I have so many things in my head. from this last month of reading, I'll try to just get it out. So please forgive me or whatever if I overwhelm you or it comes across sectarian or something. Um, but starting with the Veda, like obviously, I'm not a pundit and someone could explain better, but the Veda is generally referred to meaning knowledge, but it's generally like the source of knowledge. And there's a Vedic culture, which is like basically like ancient Indian culture, although the Vedas themselves kind of allude to a period in time where, like, now it's what, 2026 or whatever, and we have all this technology and AI, and we're so advanced and everything, but the Vedic uh, scriptures and the Vedic culture kind of alludes to a time previously where humans were actually much more advanced and much more like connected with nature. They had like different technologies, with mantra and things like this. And you do find, and that doesn't gel with the kind of modern perspective of humanity. There's a bit of a clash, but you can find evidence if you look. It's not very difficult to find evidence of, that there was civilizations previously that were, advanced. There was some kind of devastation or destruction, and then there's like kind of like a period of, nothing, and then again, like the civilization of humanity that we see today kind of emerges again. So I'm just trying to bring up that the Vedas like allude that previously humans were actually like much more spiritual, much more connected with nature, and then because of that, like technologically superior, but it was like a very different way of living. It was very much centered around enlightenment and self-realization, and this culture wasn't just restricted to like India. It was actually like kind of broadly more spread out around the planet. uh, but the Veda, meaning knowledge, it's not just for like self-realization in the highest sense. The Veda is all kinds of information is there. There's medicine, there's politics, there's like, quote unquote material things. How to deal with, whatever I already said, politics, science, or everything is there in the Veda. And not only that, the Veda, there's Veda is like very big, but then traditionally it was like an oral tradition, and then this oral tradition was like written down and divided into four Vedas. And the person who compiled them is known as Veda Vyas or Vyasadeva. He's given the credit for compiling the Vedas, and the reason is in the Vedic system, time is cyclical, and there's four yuga cycles. There's Satyug, Treta-yuga, Dwapar-yuga, and Kali-yuga, and then these cycles repeat cyclically. And in Kali Yuga, which is where we are now, according to the Vedic system, it's characterized by, it's like a period of hypocrisy and quarrel, or they call it like the age of darkness. And basically it just, and even though we have technology and all these things and comforts and everything, and we may think that we're very advanced, but it's actually like a de-evolution in one sense, where the people become kind of more degraded, more materialistic, less spiritual, more bodily conscious. Because the Vedas, they're really emphasizing this point, Atato Brahma Jignasa, like, okay, now you've come to the human form of life, inquire about Brahman. And Brahman means spirit. This is like how the Veda begins. Like, you are spirit. You need to understand that this body is temporary, this world is temporary, this sun will explode, this whole thing will finish, but you will live on eternally. And that's the beginning of the Vedic wisdom. That's the platform of the Vedas, that you are actually ultimately a spiritual being, eternal spiritual being in a temporary world. So please inquire. The Vedas are inquiring. Please inquire. But not but there's so many varieties of humans. There's so many varieties of people with different karma, different mentalities, different perspectives. Therefore, the Veda accommodates for the different mentalities of the people. So if you're familiar with like Ayurveda or yoga, you'll be familiar with the terms like sattva, rajas, tamas. So like material energy is like, you could almost say personified, but like divided into three states of being, like goodness, passion, and ignorance, sattvas, rajas, tamas. And for example, tamas is considered like mode of ignorance, or the mode of darkness, but it's not all bad. It's like, for example, you need tamas to go to sleep. If you don't sleep, how can you function? If you can't function, how can you perform your spiritual activities? So it's not all bad, but then, tamas is usually like darkness and like ignorance, and, generally, it's kind of like being in the mode of ignorance is not so favorable for spiritual life. Of course, for bhakti, there's no obstacles. Bhakti is independent. Bhakti can manifest to someone in the mode of ignorance or passion or goodness. Bhakti is independent. But at the same time, there for goodness is a favorable platform to enter into the transcendental sphere, you could say. Like Rajas is generally like tamas, you're like kind of generally inactive. People who are like very much, addicted to drugs, they stay in dark all day, they, eat nasty foods, they don't do anything inactive. This is generally like associated with the mode of ignorance. But like I said, ignorance sometimes is useful. Passion is like generally you're attached to the result. You work hard to get something to enjoy. You want to build stuff. You want to do things, move things. But then the issue with Rajas is you crash into ignorance. You like work, 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 get the result, and then finish. Like Rajas, it's a bit of a where goodness, it's associated with like enlightenment, wisdom, knowledge, like being healthy, yoga, peaceful, shanti, mind is calm, undisturbed. So material world is ruled over by these modes of material energy, and they interact and mix in different ways. In the material world, you never get pure tamas or pure ignorance or pure rajas or pure sattva. There's always a mix of them, and they're always changing with the sun moving and the day moving and everything. So the modes, they're always shifting, but the most favorable and the most way we can be peaceful and happy is to be situated in the mode of goodness. And this is a platform through which we can jump to the transcendental platform, which means, enlightenment and self-realization. Goodness is very favorable for that. So the reason I'm speaking about the modes is because the Vedas themselves are divided into modes of material nature. There's Vedas in the mode of ignorance, there's Vedas in the mode of passion, and there's Vedas in the mode of goodness. And then we do even argue that there's Vedas that are transcendental, which is coming to the Srimad Bhagavatam, which we'll get to in a minute. And the reason that this is interesting is because the Vedic system is so broad, or you could say like, ultimately like Vedas claiming to be coming from God or Brahman or whatever like perspective you're looking at it from, but like, or the source of the Vedas is divine, but this divinity is aware that we would say there's different strokes for different folks, or different moods for different dudes, which means people have a different conditioning, a different psychophysical nature, which means like they'll be attracted to certain things. So there's like, you may have seen or heard of like the Agoris, they're like they wear skulls and, they like eat dead bodies and stuff like this. But like in Hinduism, there's a social space for them. Like they live next to the burning guts and they eat dead bodies and things like this, which is completely gross and weird and confusing. Uh, but at the same time, like in Hinduism, there's a social space for them. It's considered to be like a bona fide, like, I don't know if you can say transcendental, but like a Vedic path. And that's because these people, they are the people that are attracted to this path. Like, I'm sorry, it's tamasic, like it's in the mode of ignorance. You're eating dead bodies and smearing yourself in ashes of dead bodies and things like this. But it is a bona fide path. Like and then it gets to the point like, what is the goal? And we'll get to there with what is the goal of like Srimad Bhagavatam in one sense. But the point that I'm trying to make is that there is different paths for different people because people are different and attracted to different things and they have different desires and different goals. So the Vedic system is so broad that it caters for them. It gives people the facility to practice based on kind of where they're at in the universe or like in their life, which is very broad. It's not like a one shoe fits all model. But then it gets to the point of like, okay, so what do you want? Like, why would someone become an Agori? Like, why would you start eating dead bodies and smearing ashes? And like, I'm not so learned about Agoris. I don't exactly know what their goal is. Like, I assume somehow they're worshipping death, which means they're probably trying to conquer over death, which means like ultimately some kind of moksha, or maybe they want cities, they want mystic perfections. They want to be able to dominate or control the material energy. And, you know, if you go through the Vedic system, um, these kinds of desires are not, when you get to like sattvic shastras or like, Srimad Bhagavatam, like these kinds of desires to want to dominate the material energy, to be the controller or like to conquer over death. What to speak of bhakti, like it's definitely not so favorable for bhakti, but it's these kinds of things are keeping you in this cycle of samsara where you have to take repeated birth and death because you're having a desire to lord it over the material energy, not really to escape the material energy, but to just kind of be the boss or whatever. Like again, don't quote me on the goal or the desire of the agoris. I haven't studied it, but just as a general principle, like if you're having material desires, you're going to be kind of stuck within the material world in this cycle of samsara of repeated birth and death. So so the Vedas, they're supposed to gradually purify the living entities, like from tamas to rajas to sattva to like the transcendental platform of like liberation or like ultimately awakening pure love of God. This is like a general, how to say, like path of progression that's encouraged through from the Vedas. So you have the Vedas in the different modes of material energy. Like even Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, we said at the beginning, Triguna Vishayo Veda. He says, actually, the Vedas are made of the three gunas, sattva, rajas, tamas. So basically, Krishna's saying the Vedas are material. And like Kevala Bhakti was saying that flowery language, like it's poetic. It's the Vedas are poetic. They're spiffy, um, which means like Krishna's in one sense, even though he's the source of the Vedas, but he also says, actually, from the Vedas, I am to be known, which means like the Vedas ultimately are meant to bring you to like the stage of self-realization or enlightenment, like understanding your soul and the soul of your soul, like your divine source. This is the point of the Vedas. Which is why now we're going to come to the Srimad Bhagavatam, is that, so you have the Vedas, the Triguna Vishaya Veda, like Vedas in the material modes of nature, and then Vyasadeva, who compiled the Vedas and divided them into four and wrote them down, because in Kali Yuga, the oral tradition gets distorted, so we had to like record it so it can be authoritative. And then what Vyasadeva did is because there's so much in the Vedas, like it's so much stuff, you can't finish it in a lifetime. He wrote a commentary on the Vedas. Like he summarized all the Vedas as the Vedanta Sutra. So the Vedanta Sutra is a natural commentary on the entire Vedas. Basically, what is the essence of the Vedas? It's there in the Vedanta Sutra. But the issue with the Vedanta Sutra is very spiffy. Like sutras means they're like short little two-line poems, you can say, packed with wisdom and information. But what happens is, because they're so spiffy, people can extract different meanings from the text. So Sanskrit is a bit like this. Like if you shift where you break the word up, you can change the meaning. And therefore, from the Vedanta Sutra, you get different kind of transcendentalists having different conclusions, which is quite common, in religion. Like William Blake has this famous poem where he says, both read Bible day and night, but one reads black and one reads white. Or one sees black and one sees white, So you see this again and again where there's one like text or source of information, but different people will extract different meanings from the text based on their particular goal or their particular lineage or their particular psychophysical nature, which gets a bit, confusing in one sense, can be. So the Vedanta Sutra was summarized as like given as a summary of the Veda by Vyasadeva, and then now you come to the Srimad Bhagavatam, which I just spent 1 month kind of reading. And Srimad Bhagavatam is Srimad Bhagavatam Pramanam Amalem Pumarto Mahan. It's considered like the spotless Purana, like full of rust, full of ecstasy, you can say, full of spiritual bliss, the Srimad Bhagavatam. And what happened was, Vyasadeva had compiled the Vedas. He'd done all this hard work, but he wasn't feeling peaceful in his heart. He wasn't feeling satisfied. So Vyasadeva, just for you to know, is considered to be like the literary incarnation of Bhagavan. Means like in scripture, it will be described as like a Shakti Avesh avatar, which, as far as I understand, like Vyasadeva, he's like a jiva, but he's been empowered by the Shakti of divinity to compile the Vedas. Like he's considered to be, basically like non-different to divinity, like a divine source, Vyasadeva. But he himself, after compiling the Vedas, wasn't feeling peaceful. Some issue was there. And uh, what happens is his spiritual master, who goes by the name Narada Muni, and if you're familiar with the Vedas, Narada Muni, this name comes again and again and again and again. He's basically like a transcendental spaceman, flies all over the universe, in and out of all the different Vedic scriptures, basically giving enlightenment and spreading spiritual wisdom. Like he's a very, revered personality, doing good for humanity, doing not just humanity, for all living beings, actually. And that's because he's a great Vaishnava. Anyway, Narada Muni, he's the spiritual master and guide of Vyas. And so when Vyas is feeling so dejected and unsatisfied, Narada Muni comes and tells him, the reason you don't feel satisfied is because you haven't honored your heart. You haven't lived up to what's true to you. In the heart of your hearts, you have this mood, but instead of like honoring yourself, what you've done is you've tried to satisfy the hearts and minds of all the other living beings, which is why you've compiled the Vedas in the different modes of material nature to cater for them. Like we call it like bridge preaching, like instead of just telling it straight, you beat around the bush in order to like try to satisfy the mentality of your audience, which can work, but it doesn't satisfy and nourish the self sometimes. Like if see Vyas, he wasn't feeling true to himself, because within his heart he has this desire to worship and glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But he hadn't done that. He had basically created this whole entire literature, which Narada Muni comes and says, you're actually misleading the people, because what you've done is you've catered for their material desires. And it's deceptive in one sense. So of course you're not going to feel good. Like you tried to do a good thing, but the result is you don't feel peaceful at heart. So what you should do is you should honor yourself and develop this scripture that is like true, like the true essence from your heart of the entire Vedas. So the Srimad Bhagavatam then is considered to be like the fruit, the ripened fruit of the entire tree of the Vedas. So if you imagine the Vedas, it's like a big tree. The essence of this tree coming as a fruit, the ripened fruit is the Srimad Bhagavatam. And so therefore the Srimad Bhagavatam is considered to be a commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. So you have the Vedanta Sutra is like summary of the Vedas, and then the Srimad Bhagavatam is the essence of the Vedanta Sutra. Okay, so that's like context, getting us to the point of Srimad Bhagavatam. So then how does, and this was also very relevant to my wanting to present to you guys today, because I was also thinking like, oh, what will I speak on? And then like, I can think of like some interesting topic for you guys, or I can like, try to like invent something. But I was like, I just spent 1 month reading Bhagavatam. Let me be true to myself. Let me honor myself. Like instead of trying to beat around the bush, let me just like from my heart present what's inspiring to me, and maybe that will rub off on the audience. And the thing is, the Bhagavatam is full of wisdom. It's full of like amazing stories and inspiring stories that really like nourish and like tickle the heart, And I always tell people, like, especially after reading every day consistently, for me, it felt like entering into like I don't know, like a video game. Like all of a sudden the Bhagavatam was so much synchronized with my consciousness, like the things that I thought and the things that I read and then the situations that I was dealing with in a day, it was like so synchronized that it really felt like my reality was connected with the Bhagavatam. And I don't know if other people have had this experience, but I definitely had this experience, which gives me conviction that it's, a very important source of information. And the sentiment of the people that read Srimad Bhagavatam is that it's like transcendental. It's not in the modes of material nature. It's actually like above the modes of material nature, and that's because directly the Bhagavatam is trying to approach Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. So the Bhagavatam is full of amazing stories and wisdom. And the backdrop of the Bhagavatam is what happens is what happens is if you're familiar with the Bhagavad Gita and this like Mahabharata, you have Krishna and the Pandavas, like Arjun and these people. So then the grandson of Arjun is Parikshit Maharaj. So this is like now already some years after. You have the grandson of Arjun, which is Parikshit Maharaj. And Parikshit, he's basically the emperor of the world at this period of history. And what happens is, to cut a long story short, you'll have to go and read the Bhagavatam if you haven't. He gets cursed by a young Brahmin boy. There's a miscommunication, which was anyway orchestrated by, divine will. Like there's a word for that. Destiny. It was destiny. Oh, wait one sec. I gotta plug in my device. By destiny, basically by divine will, Parikshit Maharaj was cursed, and he was cursed that he will die in 7 days. If you remember The Ring, I remember growing up this horror movie, The Ring. It's like, you're gonna die in 7 days. Um, but actually, this is the reality of our situation. All of us, we're all gonna die in 7 days. I'm sorry. Now you came to this Zoom, and I've cursed you all to die in 7 days. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. One of these days, you're gonna leave your body. So we're all gonna die in one of these 7 days. And there's a few interesting points there because in the Vedic culture, you have Brahminical culture. And so the Srimad Bhagavatam describes like just before the onset of Kali Yuga, the destruction of the Brahminical culture. So like India is famous for having this caste system and it's like really bad and all this stuff. Um, but the scriptures describe a time when actually like, the Brahmins, they were really respectable and really, an integral part of the society. But this in the Bhagavatam, this is described as the beginning of the decline of the Brahminical culture, where this young Brahmin boy in his passion and ignorance cursed, this great personality to be killed. So you can imagine like some Elon Musk or Donald Trump or whatever, if they have 7 days to live, like what will they do? They'll try to establish their legacy, they'll do all their legal things, yeah, and they'll freak out. It's just like if you find out you have 7 days left to live, it's what are you gonna do? So Parikshit Maharaj, he shows the greatest example when as soon as he finds out that he's gonna leave his body, he immediately goes to the bank of he drops all of his material responsibilities immediately and goes to the bank of the Ganga. And following like the inspiration from within his own heart, he comes to this holy place. And I've been there, but the name is slipping me right now. It's not Naimisharanya, where the Bhagavatam was spoken. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's Naimisharanya, but Naimisharanya is spoken with Suta Goswami, and anyway, it doesn't matter. Details. Uh, anyway, they come to this place on the bank of the Ganga, and it was like a message had gone out on the universal group chat, and all from all over the universe and all over the world, like these different sages and yogis, they all assembled spontaneously in this one place. Like everyone knew that like something amazing was going to happen. There was some important event was taking place. And there were people from all different transcendental paths that had assembled in this location. And they were waiting, and Parikshit Maharaj was sitting there, and they understood like someone has to speak, someone has to give, Parikshit Maharaj was waiting to receive transcendental knowledge. And then what happens is there's this personality called Shukadev Goswami, who's the son of Vyasadeva. So Vyasa compiled the Vedas. Shukadev Goswami, he comes, and again, there's so much chapters of information. I'm giving the short, condensed version. Shukadev Goswami comes, and everyone understands, like, oh, here is the representative of Vyas, and he is going to speak. And then they sit and they have this conversation for 7 days, and they don't leave. They don't eat, they don't drink, they just sit and listen for 7 days. And they speak the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is, Parikshit Maharaj asked this question, like, what is the duties of someone who's about to die? That's the question that's asked. And and then we get the response, which is, I mean, there's a few questions that he asks, but this is the Srimad Bhagavatam. What is basically the best thing that the human can do when they're approaching the time of death. And like I said, all of us, are in that situation where like at some stage we have to leave, right? And even if, you know, by chance we have technology and we can live forever, like that's after some millions and billions of years, like this sun will also explode. This, you know, it's a temporary universe. So we need to understand that we're in a temporary situation. We should take advantage of like this opportunity that we have as a human form of life. You know, and Vedas are always pushing us towards self-realization and enlightenment. And then the Bhagavatam is communicating that information to us. So, you know, the Bhagavatam is giving us a goal in that regard, but that goal may not be aligned with us as individuals. Like now we can take a moment to reflect, like what is our goal? Like what do we want in this life? Like what is it that we want? Is it money? Is it happiness? Is it relationships? Is it peace? You know, but the Bhagavatam is pushing us to understand that actually, you know, as a potentiality, you are an eternal spirit soul and you have a relationship with divinity. And this human form of life is an opportunity for you to realize yourself and the self of yourself and enter into that transcendental reality. So the Bhagavatam is pushing us to um, take advantage of the human form of life and basically attain self-realization. But like I said in the beginning, like not everyone has that goal. Therefore, there's different Vedas for different people. But then if one is able to find inspiration to come to the Bhagavat platform, then if we take advantage of this information, we can also achieve this state of self-realization. So the Bhagavatam describes uh, in different yugas, there was different processes for self-realization. So in Satyug, it was like transcendental meditation. They call it the golden age. You know, people were completely aligned with nature. You know, in full harmony. They lived, you know, a very, very long time, and they were able to really enter into these deep meditations. And that was actually the standard process for self-realization. And then in the next yug, the Treta Yug, it was, I guess, fire sacrifice. Maybe I'm mixing it up, but they were doing these big sacrifices with yagyas and mantras and brahmins and priests. And this was like a system of maintaining balance with like the higher dimensions and the demigods. Like they would do these yagyas and they would actually invite, you know, like Indra or like, you know, these personalities, demigods, or like what we would probably call aliens or something, like these higher dimensional beings, very, very advanced beings, would actually physically come to this realm and interact with the yagya. They were so powerful. But the thing is, as time goes on, the material energy degrades and people aren't able to follow the same standards. Like with yagyas, it requires like perfect pronunciation of mantras. And you'll find stories even in the Bhagavatam, like if you pronounce something wrong, it changes the meaning. Like same with Sanskrit, if you put a short A instead of a long A, or a long A instead of a short A, or if you stress this part of the word instead of that part of the word, it can change the meaning. So the point is in Kali Yuga, there's no qualified Brahmins who can actually chant these mantras, who have the purity to like invoke the presence of the demigods. And then in Dwapara Yuga, it was deity worship, so opulent temple worship. We see like, you know, in Hindu temples or like even devotees, they're worshiping the form of the Lord in a deity form. And that was like the process. But then in Kali Yuga, it's called Harinam Sankirtan. San is the root is Sanskrit root samyak, which means together, and kirtan, which means to glorify. So in Kali Yuga, the recommended process recommended in the Bhagavatam for self-realization is Harinam Sankirtan, which basically means to come together with people that you feel very connected to, very inspired with, and vibrate these transcendental subject matters, which means, you know, stories from the Bhagavatam or even like divine holy names of Bhagavan congregationally. And this is the way it's called Jito Darpana Marjanam, which means like to cleanse the mirror of the consciousness or to cleanse the mirror of the heart so that we can actually realize and see our true self. This is the process recommended in the Bhagavatam. And this is basically the conversation between Shukadev Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj, is that they're actually doing kirtan. Shukadev Goswami is considered to be the greatest kirtaniya because he speaks the Bhagavatam. And the best listener, because Shravanam Kirtanam, is Parikshit Maharaj because he so perfectly heard the Bhagavatam. And just by hearing, he attained perfection. So it's, you know, just from your ears, just from hearing from the proper source, we can receive enlightenment. Or, you know, the greatest kirtan is Shukadeva Goswami. He spoke so nicely, this kirtan, this divine glorification. And he's considered to be the greatest kirtanier. So it's interesting, you know, how this process works. But then the Bhagavatam, as it goes on, it describes like beautiful, beautiful stories and lessons. There's 12 cantos in the Bhagavatam, and it's like full of, you know, amazing personalities that we can take a lot of inspiration from. So I'll just speak whatever I can remember, a few, and then I'll stop, and if you guys want to add something, you can. One of the stories in the Bhagavatam that always stands out for me is the prayers of Queen Kunti, which is in the 8th chapter of the 1st canto. And Kunti, she prays, you know, the Kunti, she's the mother of the Pandavas, the 5 Pandavas, Arjun, and Arjun you must know, and she's the mother. And if you're familiar with Mahabharata, they went through so much difficulty, like full, unfortunate, crazy, heavy, you know, burnt alive, you know, poisoned, exiled, attacked, to the point where, you know, Arjun, he's standing on the battlefield. And he's like, I don't even want to fight. I don't want to kill my family. I don't want to kill my grandfather. Like, okay, they did wrong, but I don't want to do the wrong things. And can you imagine like having to kill your teacher, having to kill your cousins, your brothers, your friends that you grew up with? Like, this is how bad it got. And Kunti, she prays like, please put me through these difficulties again and again. Because when I'm in these difficult situations, I'm fully conscious of like the soul of my soul is present. I'm connected to divinity. Like, because when, you know, when everything's good in our lives, we're usually like, ah, yeah, whatever, everything's good. Like, I'm the best and everything's great. But when we suffer, then we're a little bit more like, oh my God, everything's, oh man, like need a bit of help over here. Someone throw me a life raft or whatever. So Kunti, she prays, like, please put me through difficulties, because when I'm in these difficulties, that's the peak of my consciousness, when I feel connected. And when I'm so connected to this divinity, I'm no longer forced to again take birth, repeated birth and death in this material world. When I'm like fully connected in this consciousness, I'm on the transcendental platform. I'm free from birth and death. So this is always something that sticks with me, because we're in the material world is full of suffering. There's always problems in the material world. But actually these problems can be opportunities for us to go closer to our goal, or to go closer to enlightenment, self-realization. Like these difficulties can be an opportunity for us to take shelter and from a very authentic position, really like genuinely like reach out to divinity. And so that's very powerful. It's a nice meditation we can take with us, like the prayers of Kunti, that, you know, when we go through difficulties, yes, it's horrible, but this is an opportunity for us to do better, to go closer, to grow. There's an analogy given, um, like if you take gold from a gold mine, it's mixed with impurities, right? So what do? They put it in fire, they heat it, and then they hammer it on an anvil. They hammer out the impurities, heat it, smash it, heat it, smash it. So this analogy is given for us living beings in the material world, that actually, as a potential, constitutionally, we're pure gold, you know, that can be made into the most beautiful jewels and decorations. Um, but now we're influenced by the material energy. We misidentify with the material body. We think that we're this body. I'm an Australian. I live in this place. My this and that. I'm a man. I'm this and that. All ahankar, all false ego, all temporary material designations that are completely naimitic. They're not based on the nitya, the eternal identity of the soul. It's just temporary, circumstantial. Um, just imposed on the living being. Uh, so this is all ahankar, false ego, but actually we're pure gold, we're spirit soul. So what the material world does is it purifies us, it puts us in situations. Actually, this material world has been perfectly designed for you, like literally like for you, like the situation that you are in right now is the situation that has been orchestrated, you know, the best for you to get the lessons that you need to get to go through the things that you need to go through in order to like level up in your consciousness and you know basically come to the enlightened platform. And the thing is, like Vedas are describing, the Bhagavatam is describing the way samsara works is if you don't learn, if you don't like if your consciousness doesn't expand and you don't like assimilate like the lessons that the universe is trying to teach you, you will again have to keep going through these lessons again and again. Like a very mundane example, like if you're not kind to people, if you're not a nice person, you're like being an asshole all the time, you know, your consciousness is contracted, you're very materialistic, then, you know, you're going to have to again go through difficulties and again birth and birth until you learn how to treat people properly. And this is just a very basic, like human thing. But just to give you some idea, like once we've understood, once we've assimilated the lesson, now we've like, we don't need to again take birth to learn that. We've understood, and that's a part of our like journey. And then, so anyway, this world is orchestrated and designed perfectly for us to go through what we need to go through in order to ultimately reach like the highest stages of enlightenment, if that's our goal. If it's not our goal, then we just in the world of karma and birth and reactions and whatever, it's fine. But if we have the consciousness, the vision, the perspective, then every single thing is an opportunity for us to evolve. And that's the prayer of Kunti. That's the vision of Kunti. You know, she's teaching us like this. And that's very powerful information to carry with us when we go about our day-to-day life, because the world is full of suffering. But then next time we're in a difficult situation, if we understand like, oh, this is actually mercy, this is actually an opportunity for me to grow, then this bad thing became the most positive thing. And actually, this is like the perspective of the spiritualists or the transcendentalists. Like this, some names I'll say you may or may not know, but there's a conversation between Ramananda Roy and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So they're great Bengali saints. Well, Ramananda Roy. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But there's a conversation where they're considered like acharyas, like very learned personalities. They ask like, who is the greatest? Mahaprabhu asked this question, like, who is the greatest capitalist? And like, what is a great capitalist? A great capitalist is someone who takes something that has no value and then sells it for a big profit. You know, like you have a stream in your backyard, flowing water, and you bottle it up. It costs you nothing, and you sell it for $5 a bottle as like organic water. Like you're a great capitalist. Well done. So Mahaprabhu asked this question: who is the greatest capitalist? And they say like, oh, the spiritualist is the greatest capitalist because why? They take this temporary material body, which has no value. You know, it's temporary. It's going to be finished after 100 years or whatever, 50, 100 years. You're going to be finished, has this no value. They engage it in this, you know, process of spirituality as taught in Srimad Bhagavatam. And the result is that they get free from birth and death and have an eternal spiritual form. So it's like, you know, you have something that has no value. You engage it in the process, like, okay, we're practicing bhakti yoga, engage it in the process of bhakti, and the result is, you know, Krishna Prem, like you've awakened love for God, which is eternal, ever expanding, anandam buddhivardhanam, ever increasing bliss with every step. You know, so you've taken something that has zero, temporary, and turned it into eternal. So therefore, like that's the greatest like capitalist, the greatest businessman, where you've taken something with nothing and turned it into. And this is what's being offered in the Bhagavatam, you know, this opportunity for you as a spirit soul, you know, as a living being to take the highest benefit. So like this, the Bhagavatam is full of resourceful information that you can add to your consciousness to expand your consciousness and then have this perspective to deal with the different situations in the material world that align with your ultimate goal, like the goal of your heart. You know, of course, that's easier said than done, but that's what's being offered. And one more pastime that came in my head, and I'll probably finish with this one, is like I think it's in the fourth canto. You get to Dhruva. You heard of Dhruva Maharaj? He's like a prince. And anyway, some details are there, but basically Dhruva, he wants to get a kingdom. He has this desire. He wants a kingdom greater than his father or his grandfather, just Lord Brahma. Basically, he has like the most insane material desire, like the most unachievable material desire that you could wish for. Like, I want to be emperor of the whole world, you know, not just the whole world, the whole universe. I want to colonize like everything. And with this, he approaches the Bhagavad. And it's the same person that came to Vyas, Narada Muni, finds Dhruva in the forest trying to be all spiritual and tells him, hey, you're a small boy, go home. This is not for you. He's like, no, no, I want it, I want it. And then he's like, okay. So he teaches him the process to awaken self-realization. He teaches him this mantra, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And Dhruva, he does this kirtan. He just vibrates this mantra and he's doing pranayam and yoga. And very, very, very quickly, he attains siddhi, perfection. But he has approached this process with material desire. Like, he wants to be the emperor of the world. He wants to have a great kingdom, you know, and this is his motivation for doing it. It's not the highest level of self-realization. But what happens is, in the process of performing this sadhana or this daily practice and this vibrating these holy names, it actually like purifies him internally. It cleanses the consciousness and his eyes become smeared with the pulp of love. And what happens is he gets a spurti where like he actually attains this stage of self-realization. And at that moment, and this is recorded in the Bhagavatam, he realizes like, oh my God, like I was searching after broken pieces of glass. And what this self-realization is actually like a mountain of diamonds. You know, me wanting to become the emperor of the universe is like a pile of broken glass compared to what's available, like compared to what I can relish from within my own consciousness, from within my own being, from within. I can have an experience that's like a mountain of diamonds. And so stories like this can help us like what's the word, like tap on our consciousness, like, you know, like what are we searching after, like what are we going, what do we want, like we want to be happy, okay, or we want wealth, or what is it? But then the Bhagavatam is claiming that, you know, there's something far greater than any wealth. Anything you can achieve, anything you can desire is available like from within, you know, and that's like self-realization. And so there are many stories like that, and I've been speaking for almost an hour, so I'll slow it down. But just one more came in my head, because again, this Narada Muni, transcendental spaceman, and I'll make it quick. But there's this Mrigari the hunter, right? And he learned from his father for some reason. Like they were like he was a hunter, but he would torture the animals. He would like kill them, but half kill them and let them die because he's just a bit of a crazy guy. And Narada Muni comes and tells him, like, yo, like, just kill them properly. You know, this is the great saint who's, you know, obviously strict vegetarian, ahimsa, like, doesn't kill anything, he's giving enlightenment to all beings. He's like, hey, just giving the instruction, don't half kill them, kill them. Like, okay, just kill them fully. It's less bad for them. And okay, but this is how I learned from my father. I inherited this perspective. He's like, okay, stop and then chant this mantra. He tells him, chant the name of Ram, you know, Ram, the rest of like spiritual. Chant Ram, 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 Ram. And this guy, he's like, nah, I can't even say this name. So Narada Muni says, chant Mara. Mara means death. Just chant death, 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 death. The thing is, when you chant Mara, 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 it becomes Mara, 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 Mara. And this hunter, just by indirectly vibrating this transcendental sound, again, Chito Darpana Marjanam, same like Dhruva in one sense, it actually purified the consciousness and allowed him to the point where the next time Narada Muni came, this, you know, Mrigari, he was like so grateful to see this person. He wanted to like show his respect, but there were like some ants on the way, and he took his cloth and just like, you know, even a small ant he didn't want to hurt. And this is someone that came from like, you know, torturing living beings to even the little ant. So again, like it's stories and everything, but all this, it gives us wisdom, it gives us information that we can like put in our own consciousness, and like how do we treat other living beings? How do we treat, what to speak of the ant? How do we treat our neighbor? You know what I mean? How do we treat like the person sitting next to us, or like, you know, whatever, like all these stories give us wisdom. And then we may not be desiring the highest stage of enlightenment that's offered in Srimad Bhagavatam. We may have other desires, but in the same way Mrigari or in the same way Dhruva, you know, if we take advantage of the teachings and absorb the wisdom, then Chatodarpana Marjana, it will purify the heart. Like if you imagine you have a mirror and the mirror is covered with dust, we cannot see our reflection. It's all blurry and weird. And if we're in ignorance, we'll think like, oh, I'm a blurry, dusty thing. But if we wipe away the dust of the mirror, then, oh, actually, wow, I have so much form and I have, wow, my eyes are green. Wow, like, whatever. So similarly, we may, approach with some material desires, but then if we just take advantage of the process or just enter into hearing these topics and, practicing these things, then it purifies us and we still at some stage will get like this transcendental result. And then of course you have Vyas himself who just like directly goes for it and he feels the most satisfaction in his heart. So yeah, ich stop. I saw people was posting stuff, but I was on my rant, so I didn't read it. I've heard a monk call Vedas a kalpavriksha or wish-granting tree that answers to everything we can ask. Yeah, the Vedas cater to different people in different moods. Very true. Read Nityam Bhagavata Sevya. Yeah, if we can just read, like even for us, if we had time, we'd read more. We were just reading one verse a day and then discussing it for like 40 minutes. And you extract so much nectar from the Bhagavatam. Yeah. So I'll stop. It didn't really go as planned, but I didn't have a plan. I just spoke. So please don't mind. But my idea was to try to emphasize, like, even if we may not have like this desire to like be free of birth and death and obtain like the higher stages of enlightenment offered to the human being, like whatever, but still we should take advantage of this Srimad Bhagavatam because it's full of nectar and we will still get transcendental results. Even if we have some other desire, it'll still expand our consciousness and give us so much inspiration and wisdom that's so practical and helpful in life. So, Srimad Bhagavatam.
Thank you, Urugaya. I enjoyed hearing the story of Narada Muni and then Vyasadeva not being satisfied and then coming to the Srimad Bhagavatam. Just goes on to show that what we've received is like the, the ultimate product, and we've received it. We don't have to do any analyzing. It's all been done, and it's just kind of like accepting it and trying to follow that in our lives. Yeah, we just have a few minutes, but if anybody wants to share some last reflections, please feel free to share on the chat. Niharika says, what an absolute beautiful summary of the nectar of Srimad Bhagavatam. Thank you for sharing.
I think in my head, before I spoke today, I wanted to spend more time actually talking about pastimes from the Bhagavatam. I think I took a long time like getting to the Bhagavatam, which was a bit of my mistake because there's 12 cantos, so it's just full of amazing stories. Like there's Prithu Maharaj, like after King Venu, and there's Prahlad, and it's just full of, what to speak of 10th canto when you come to the pastimes of Krishna. Yeah. So, but I think different people have different desires and therefore different goals. Like not everyone gonna come to Bhagavatam or appreciate Bhagavatam, but it's just full of nectar. Take advantage. Why not?
Thank you. I just shared a link to reading the book online. It's very long. It has 12 cantos, but
18,000 verses. So if you read
yeah.
one verse a day, it'll take 18,000 days. I don't even want to do the math. It's like 30 years or something or more.
Oh my God.
No, anyway, whatever.
Yeah. I know some people like the actual book. If you would like, we do give sets. You can have give a donation, get a copy. So if you would like to read this, you can contact me or Ian, and we can get it to you delivered at your home, right at the doorstep. So yeah.
Highly recommended. And just having the Bhagavatam in your house, it's such a good energy. Like it
Yeah,
just pulses with energy.
definitely.
Mhm.
All right. Then thank you everyone for joining. Just wanted to put the Eventbrite for this week's events or this month's events. We've got a sound bath tomorrow, yoga flow, sound bath by Ari on Friday, and then Saturday, I know Niharika is leading this with another volunteer, but we have a family-friendly kirtan. You can get if you have a kid or you know a kid who wants to come to kirtan, you can bring them along. But yeah, that's the Eventbrite if you're in Seattle area. But otherwise, thank you, Urugaya, for this talk. We're counting down days until we get to hear from you again. This was really nourishing, and we'll see all of you next week at Wisdom Wednesdays again.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Thank
again.
you. Hare Krishna. Bye.